as a congregant. My wife worked in the nursery, and I tell people that I'm a Methodist because she's really cute, and I'm at Palmdale because of Pastor Jim. Well, we have two Pastor Jims. Pastor Jim Powell, who's our DS. He was my first Pastor Jim, and then Pastor Jim White, who just came to us from Hawaii in, was it July? Is that when the switchover is? Yeah, July 1st. And I tell people I'm at Palmdale because of Pastor Jim. And when I first came there, like he said, I had, I guess he said it in the last session, I had hair down to my waist. I was a guitar player in a rock band and a recovering Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic, and what I found out is I found out much later that my dad was born and raised Methodist, and then he converted to Catholicism to marry my mom. I was born and raised Catholic, and then I converted to Methodist to marry my wife. Well, I didn't have to, but it just ended up that way. So we got this nice little circle of life going here. But I've been the worship director at Palmdale since 2008. Before that, I was the band director for a few years. And then Pastor Jim came up to me one Sunday and said that, I hear you play guitar. We're thinking of starting a contemporary service at church, and would I be interested in doing it? And what he didn't know at the time was that's where I learned how to play guitar. I learned how to play guitar in the Catholic Church. The youth group leader was the guitarist and leader of the group, and he. I knew like 3 chords and not very good at that. And he was the one who kind of pulled me in and said, well, hey, why don't you come up and play? And this was in the mid-'80s. So acoustic worship was just kind of, the thing in the Catholic Church. But I didn't have an acoustic guitar. I had this really cheap old electric guitar, bright red, and the only amplifier that I had was this, Sears special thing. And we had a big Catholic church, the big shotgun type of sanctuary. And so the only way that I could be heard is, I had to turn the thing up really loud because there were really no mics for the instruments. And so it just had this bad distortion sound. It was terrible. If looks could kill, the old ladies that sat in the front I would have been dead 1,000 times over. But he allowed me to participate, and that was huge for me. And so when Pastor Jim Powell asked me if I would be interested in doing contemporary music at Palmdale, of course outside I'm saying, yeah, I'll think about it. Inside I'm going, wow, okay, sure. It had been quite a few years since I had been in church. I had some issues with the Catholic Church, and I fell away as a young adult. And I started going to the Methodist Church because at the time we were just dating. I would stop in once in a while. My wife went to Crescent Heights United Methodist Church in West Hollywood, which is, I guess, no longer around. Part of the reason I know why is because when I did go and visit her at her church, I increased the congregation size by like 25%. There were 3 people, and the minister and the guy who played piano, and that was pretty much it. So the way that they were able to survive was because of they had a very nice kitchen, and that they would rent out for AIDS projects for feeding shut-ins. And so it lasted for a little while. But like I said, that's how I got into the Methodist Church. And when he asked me if I wanted to do some contemporary music, I said yes. And originally I was just the guitar player in the back of the room. I was there because I enjoyed it. I saw it as an opportunity to give back of myself to God for the gifts that he gave me. I learned how to play guitar in the church, and like I said, it's kind of a full circle type thing. But I was pretty detached, because I was still, nursing my wounds, even though it had been probably 4 or 5 years. I still was very, very hesitant about any organized religion in general. But again, Pastor Jim allowed me to grow and mature in my own way, and he never really pushed it. And then there was a time where I had been having a pain in my neck pretty much on and off for years. And I finally told my wife about it, and she said, well, you better go to the doctor and check it out. And the doctor's throwing things like cancer, and because my mom had just had thyroid cancer and had her thyroid removed, and so they were concerned about that. And I was, I had all those blood tests done and things like that, and I'd gone back to the doctor to get the results, and he told me that, good news, bad news. Good news is it's not cancer. We did all the tests. Everything's fine. Bad news is we don't really know what it is. And eventually I either got used to it or ignored it or it went away. I don't remember. But I remember going out to my car, and I was sitting there and just trying to decompress from everything, because the emotions were just like welling up in me, the possibility of having cancer. And there was a CD in my player, and it was a song called Praise Your Name. And the lyrics are, I praise your name among the nations, I praise your name with all my heart, I join my voice with all creation, praising your name for who you are. And I realized that I wasn't doing that. I was just the guitar player in the back of the room. And even though I'd never had my voice taken from me, it was almost like it was given back to me. And so I decided at that point that I wasn't going to be the guitar player in the back of the room. Even if I was off mic, I was going to sing, I was going to do whatever I needed to do to lift my voice in praise of God. So that's how I got into that. And then eventually our music director did contract cancer and did pass away. And when she passed away, then Pastor Jim asked if I would kind of be the band director, and I would lead the band. And then eventually we had a couple of other music directors go by the wayside and move on to other things. And in 2008, he asked me if I would pray and consider taking over as the music director. And I was having fun as just being the band director. And I was also I was a network administrator and desktop support for a large electronics manufacturing company in the Antelope Valley. And I'd been in the IT field for 15 years and really enjoyed it. I was doing well at it. And but this was going to mean giving up all of that and going into full-time ministry. And so every time I put up a reason why I shouldn't take this job, God just kind of knocked it down. And so what about this? Boom. What about, all right, fine, God, I get it. I'll do it. And so I've been doing full-time ministry since 2008. And I direct the band, I direct the choir, and I direct the bell choir. So I'm doing all of those things. And then computer stuff on the side. Technically, 30 hours of my week go towards music, and then 10 hours a week go towards the network and computer systems of the church. Usually it's more like 60 hours a week towards music and about 40 hours a week towards computers, but that's the way it is. But I really enjoy it. But yeah, we have a unique situation in the sense that I'm in charge of both contemporary and traditional worship. And coming from a Catholic background, I don't know what traditional Methodist worship is. Pastor Jim Powell was also not raised Methodist, and so he got the traditional studies, but he didn't really have a traditional Methodist style of worship either. So we kind of winged it. We have some traditional aspects in our traditional service, and we do some traditional stuff in our contemporary service. Just like every once in a while I might sneak in some contemporary stuff into the traditional service. But we don't call it a traditional service, we call it traditions, and then generations is our contemporary service, because it's not really contemporary. You kind of got an idea of what we kind of do on a normal Sunday in our contemporary service. Because I was not really exposed to the hymns of the Methodist Church. It was pretty eye-opening when I started, looking at those lyrics. And I think that's one of the things that contemporary music misses. They call it 7-11 music. It's the same 7 words repeated 11 times in the song. And there is such a strong doctrinal theology that's present in the hymns that is missing in a lot of these contemporary songs, that I try and incorporate both. And I know this wasn't necessarily exactly what I was supposed to be talking about today, but that's where my heart is. That's where I've been praying about. Is a little while ago, we had this thing called AV Unite up in the Antelope Valley, AV Antelope Valley. And it was worship leaders from the Vineyard, from Central Christian, Grace Chapel, a lot of the large churches, and then me, non-denominational, and then me, the lone mainline church. And the way that we did it is, it was kind of similar to this, where we had instead we had a night of worship on a Friday night, where we did a whole hour and a half worship service, and then the next day we did workshops and everything like that. And one of the things that I did was incorporating what I call ancient hymns into modern worship, because we've got 400 years of theology that's just wrapped up in these hymns, that it's a shame to just push it out because you're trying to do contemporary worship. I don't know if your churches are a mix of contemporary and traditional, if they're all traditional or just all contemporary. I can imagine any Methodist church being all contemporary, but you're all contemporary? Okay. And what did the traditional service kind of fall off? And
it used to be 70-30 traditional and contemporary, 60-40, 50, then gradually became 10% traditional, 90% people who
wow.
returned to attendance.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, the pastor decided, let's just go on.
Okay.
But we occasionally will do hymns too.
Right.
In the contemporary stuff.
Yeah, and that's we kind of gave you a little example of that. Is that there's I'm not doing anything new, especially within the last 5 years in contemporary music. You'll hear people either doing a contemporary song and then tagging it with a chorus of a traditional hymn, or one of my favorite, Chris Tomlin's "Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone." They'll do "Amazing Grace," and it's in a different meter. It's a 4/4 instead of 3/4. But then he adds this beautiful hymn, or this beautiful chorus of "My chains are gone, I've been set free." I almost did that this morning too, but in terms of time constraints, we couldn't do everything. But that's one of the things that I try and do is incorporate at least one hymn in our contemporary service, because of the theology that's present in hymns. And so I encourage you, to not abandon that. I mean, there really isn't a place for traditional and contemporary. I mean, if you look at the way our services are set up, like I said, we don't do a traditional Methodist service, so it's not maybe applicable to what you have. But I have pretty much the same order for the traditional service as I do for the contemporary service. The only difference is the songs. I've got hymns in the first service with the choir singing the anthem, which we call special music, because terminology, nobody knows what an anthem is. Nobody knows what a narthex is. We call that the lobby or the front of the church. So we change the names, but the choir does the anthem, or does special music, and then the sermon is the same for the first service and the second service. And then for the contemporary service, then it's all pretty much contemporary music, but then I'll throw in a hymn or two, just to, especially because when I plan a worship service, I don't go at it as I find out what the scripture passage is, and I find out what the sermon topic is, and I go from there. And if a hymn fits that better than a contemporary song, I'll use the hymn. If a contemporary song fits better than the hymn, I'll use a contemporary song. So in terms of planning, that's the way that I do it. There's lots of ways that you can do it yourself. I mean, if you notice in the hymnal, you look at a hymn, and the words are written in 1839, and the music was written in 1912. Okay, what did you do for all those years for that song? Did the words just kind of sit off to the side? And obviously the composer's long dead and gone, so that tune was not what they intended for the song. So people have been taking the words of hymns and adding different music. A good example is Aaron Schust. My Savior, My God. And what he did and his partner, they found the back library of the church, these ancient hymnals in there that nobody had seen in forever. And they just started leafing through, and they found a hymn. They had no idea how the melody went. They didn't even want to know how the melody went, but they really liked the words. And so they took the words from the hymn, and then they wrote their own music to it, and he had a hit off of it. Yeah? Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Hmm. Right. Or they'll take any type of contemporary tune, bar songs, classical music. There's a couple of pieces in the hymnal that have, yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So they'll take the words and put a different tune to it. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Another thing is, like I said, with Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone. You take the hymn. You could either sing it just the same way, but just add a different chorus to it. Another thing that I do is I'll just rearrange we'll still keep the same melody, but then I'll just put the chord structure in there. If you've tried to read a hymnal, like I said, I'm a guitar player mainly. You look in the hymnal, and every beat is a different chord. And I don't know how many guitar players we have out there, but if you're trying to change chords with every beat, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's bad enough that the keyboard player does it. So I'll take something like Freely, Freely. And I thought I had printouts of it, but I guess I didn't get it. And then I'll just simplify the chords. Well, if you saw the chords, you wouldn't. I don't know how you'd say simplified it, but I'll just cut down on the number of chords. And I did it in 6/8 time. It's in the key of E because it's a nice key for a guitar player to play in. And then we do the song. What was the ones we did today? We did What a Friend We Have in Jesus. We did the tune of 'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus. The violin played that, and then we sang What a Friend We Had in Jesus, and then we went back to the tune, and then we ended with the tune. That's another thing that you can do is just add that in there. One of the things that we asked at the first workshop was if people had noticed anything, how we ran the worship time at the thing. And one of the ladies said that about transitions, and for me that's a huge thing. I don't know if you noticed, but silence is not a bad thing in worship, but it's got to be intentional silence. Especially if you've got new people coming to your congregation. If there's a point in the service where nothing's going on, they're going to be looking around going, what am I doing here? And then they're going to leave. They're not going to come back. So I had Dathan play a pad. It's an MP3 that I picked up from worshiptutorials.com. A D pad, because a lot of the songs that we did in that middle section was in the key of D. And you just had that pad going underneath for the whole time. That was what was playing when the scripture or when the prayer was going on. So it's just a way to kind of fill up space, because I think what I call this is creating an atmosphere of worship. You want to have a space where people just feel comfortable, and if there's nothing going on, especially with today's culture, everything's quick. My kids, they always have like earbuds in their ears, or they're on their phones, or they're playing video games. They're doing something. This generation is not one of, just sitting and relaxing or just doing nothing. Something has to be going on. So silence is good, but it has to be intentional. And if it's not intentional, find something to fill up the space. Have the keyboard hold down a D. If you don't have the pad, just hold it down and have this little string sound in the background, just nice and low. But make everything that you do, because I don't know about you, but when I plan a worship service, that's a lot of work. And you want it to go as well as it can go. You want it to be successful. So make everything that you do, from the first thing that you say, although this morning we were running late, so I was kind of flustered when I was trying to greet everybody and welcome everybody, but from the first thing that you say, from the first note that you play until the last note that you play, make sure that everything in there is intentional. It's not to say that you can't leave room for the Spirit, because I know in contemporary worship that's a big thing, is to have that space. With Pastor Jim Powell, he had a tendency to preach long, so I didn't have a lot of time to do some things like what we did this morning, where just have the violin play melody stuff. That was really nice. And that was creating that atmosphere of worship. But you can still have times like that if you're intentional with what you're doing. And just one of the things that the tools that I use is Planning Center Online. I don't know if people use that. I started doing this right when I started with this in 2008, and it's not cheap. It's based on the size of your church, or it's based on how much you use. It's $50 a month, so it's kind of big. But the software, it's an online, like the name suggests. It allows me to plan the worship service. This is the list that we have. It's all timed out. It's everybody gets one of those. If you want to pass it around, if you want to look at it. Planning Center Online. PlanningCenterOnline.com. Yeah. And I use it pretty much myself, but it does have the ability to do other things. What I use it for is I can go back if I want to know what song I played on Easter in 2009. I can go back there and look, say that's what I did. That's the whole schedule. I can know if I've done a hymn too much, or if I've done a song too much. It tells me when was the last time I played it and how many times I did it, in the month or the year. It's a great tool. Plus, when I schedule the band, like when I scheduled the band this morning, I did the order of a schedule. I want Craig on violin, I want Dathan on keyboard, I want Matt on guitar, I want Sandra and Darla singing, and I do all this stuff, and I hit email, and it's got their email addresses in it, and it sends out a request to serve. And it comes to their inbox. They say, you have been requested to serve for a special service on Saturday, January 30th at Northridge. Accept or decline. If they click accept, it takes them to the page that has Planning Center. It has the schedule on there. I attach PDF files of the songs, so they can rehearse ahead of time. They can download the music to print it out, so they can rehearse ahead of time. I can link to YouTube videos, like with the last song that we did. This is Amazing Grace. It's a Phil Wickham song. Link to his YouTube video. Now, I did it a little bit lower than what he does it, so I let them know this is in the key of B. We're actually doing it in the key of A this morning. So vocalists, knock it down. Guitar players, knock it down. But it allows you to link to YouTube videos. And if they click decline, then I get an email. Well, I get an email either way, but I get an email saying, such and such has declined to serve. And then it gives me a list of all the other people that are in their position. Like if Matt couldn't play guitar, well, I only have. If Jonathan couldn't play bass, it gives me the names of the other two bass players that I have, and I click on their name, and it sends them an email saying, hey, you've been requested to serve for Saturday, January 30th. Can you make it? And they get the same accept or decline, and it's a great tool. All of my songs, all the PDF files of the music is up there. when I first got it, it's kind of a pain to populate all of it, but I've been doing it since 2008, so we've got a pretty good library up there. Yeah.
Other than taking traditional hymns and kind of working with those,
Mm-hmm.
what are your sources for, I guess, more of the 7-Eleven music?
Right.
You termed it. Where are your sources?
There's a few places. The biggest one is all of your churches should have CCLI, Christian Copyright License. That's the license that allows you to be able to print out the music. As long as the song has a CCLI number at the bottom, you can print out copies and distribute it amongst your musicians. It allows you to be able to project the words up onto the screen. If you don't have the license, you're really not supposed to be doing that. So along with the CCLI license, if you pay a little bit extra, and this is basically based off of your church size, it's Song Select. And it's a little extra fee, but what it does is, if I'm stumped for a certain topic, I can go to Song Select, and there's a theme button. Click on themes, like baptism. Click on baptism. It gives you every song that they have in their database that's related to baptism. And I go through, I don't know that one, I don't like that one. Oh, that's good. Click on that. You've got, depending on the publisher of the song, it has anything from just the lyrics, which does me no good, or a chord chart, or a lead sheet, or a hymn sheet. And the hymn sheet, like if you pull up some of the hymns from the hymnal, it's pretty much what you see in the hymnal. It's the music notation as well as the words, and that's where I get a lot of the contemporary songs is from that. Also, Worship Together, worshiptogether.com. They have it's a free registration. You go to their website every week. They post lead sheets or piano scores of contemporary songs, and they're free. You just click it, download it, you got it. Bless you.
Are the contemporary songs used the ones from 20 and 30 years ago, from the 80s and the 90s, or are there newer
I can.
contemporary songs?
Yeah. This is Amazing Grace. Let me look, because I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's a fairly recent song. Like I said, it's a Phil Wickham song, and that copyright was 2012. So that's new. But some of the other ones, like What a Friend We Have in Jesus, is public domain. How Great Thou Art was an arrangement by Tony Guerrero and Lindsay Lloyd Wallace. They were at Saddleback. That's where I got that one from. But this is Amazing Grace I got from Song Select. And they don't always have everything, the lead sheets or whatever, but usually if they have just a chord sheet, you can listen to the YouTube video and pick up the melody. And most of the musicians that you deal with, especially with volunteers, they can't read music. It's the old joke about how do you get a guitar player to turn down? Give them sheet music. Take it away. Yeah, give them a lead sheet. Yeah, I was in a classical guitar ensemble or classical guitar quartet for a while, so I can read music. So, I think.
So the Song Select have the words pre-populated on PowerPoint slides.
No,
that's going to be pretty labor intensive to get all those.
Yes and no. It does have the lyrics that you can download as like a text file. And then with most software programs, I know they use Pro Presenter, and we do also. Is yours version 4? I didn't ask you. You're up to 5? Are you on Mac or are you on Windows? Mac, okay. Yeah, was it 6 that they started doing Windows? 5 started doing Windows? Okay. But with Pro Presenter, yeah, that's the software that they use to display the words. There's a Pro Presenter. What's the real-time media, or what's the company that you go to? If you just type in Pro Presenter, it'll take, you can go to that. Oh, Renewed Vision, yeah. Renewed Vision is the company that has the software. There are a lot of good ones. We used Easy Worship for the longest time, and then we found out that it wasn't so easy. It was fairly limited. Media Shout is the other one that a lot of people use. Yeah, Media Shout, yeah. We went to Pro Presenter because we were having issues with Easy Worship, and the technical person at the time was really into Macs. At the time, Pro Presenter was only on a Mac, so if you wanted to use that software, you had to do that. So we got a Mac, and we're running Pro Presenter on a Mac. But now they've got Windows, and so I'm getting rid of the Mac, and I'm bringing in Windows machines. Actually, since I'm a network geek, I actually like Linux better than Windows or Mac, so I have no preference on those two. But yeah, Pro Presenter is the software, and it has a feature where you can import text, and what it does is you have the option of separating it by line or by paragraph, and it brings it in. There's a lot of massaging that you have to do once you get the text in there, but it allows you to create those things. The backgrounds are what's added afterwards. You do that on the fly. So you have the words, and then you choose whatever background you want to go with it. But yeah, it was kind of nice that they're using Pro Presenter, because otherwise, for the slides, I would have had to put it like in a PowerPoint format or something like that. With this, Rick told me that just right-click on it, do export, and it exported into this little file that he could open up, and it was good. So I didn't have to do any work. But depending on your volunteer situation, especially with new songs like "This Is Amazing Grace," when we first started doing it, words weren't in there, and so I'm the person. We do have people that run our technical things like Rick that can put the stuff in there, but because I'm kind of OCD on how things look, I usually am the one that types it in. That way I know how many lines there are per screen, where the carriage return is, where the line ends, how big the font is. I can control all of that. They mess with it after I leave, but I just go back in and change it before.
So you've got some very talented volunteers in addition to your two.
Yeah.
So any tips on, or how did you attract those volunteers? Was it something that happened over time? They were already a member of your congregation?
It happens over time, but what I found that is excellence brings in excellence. If I care about what I'm doing and I want to put the best thing that I have forward, the people that are coming, they watch that, they participate in it, and they want to be a part of it. And so, when we first started, our praise band was myself in the guitar in the back, Pastor Jim Powell on acoustic up front, our music director, who was also the choir director, but she was trying to do contemporary music, and the drummer, who was the youth director. He was on drums. And I don't even know if we had a bass player at the time. I think it was just our other preschool director a while ago, Charlotte, who Saunders took her place. I don't know if it's something about preschool directors having to be a part of the band, but it's worked out for me so far. Beautiful voice. But yeah, we just started with basically staff. I was the only like non-staff person at the time, and but because Pastor Jim asked me, I joined. But over the years, people come to your church, they see the band, they hear the choir. I don't want to say if they're impressed, but if they feel like they just want to be a part of it, and they'll come up and ask you. Right now, I'm a little short on drummers. At one point, I had 3 drummers, 3 bass players, 5 vocalists. I don't remember how many. One of our drummers, he got married and is moving down below. So he can only come once in a while. He was the one who was actually supposed to be playing with us this morning, but his father, Father's memorial service was today in Idlewild, at 12:30, and he said that he could do it. He could play the worship in the morning and then drive out to Idlewild. His wife said, "No, you don't." So he was there. Our other drummer was doing was it the Spartan Marathon Biathlon, to get it, roll around in the mud, do whatever. He's doing that this weekend. So I don't have a drummer this weekend. Our bass player is Jonathan, who was playing this morning. He is, like we said in worship, he's been commuting, if you want to call it that. He and his wife are originally from Southern California. They got transferred to Georgia. They were in Georgia for a while. Then he got transferred back to California. She stayed because they had kids. They were in school. They figured, oh, well, you know, when the kids are out of school, then we'll sell the house and come back to California. Well, the kids got out of school. They couldn't sell the house because property at the time was not that great. And now the kids have grown, got married, now grandkids. And his wife is like, there's no way I'm coming back to California and leaving my grandbabies in Georgia. And so he's got a transfer back to Georgia. And he was actually supposed to be flying out today, but because of the project that he's on, he works for Boeing or Northrop, one of the aerospace people. Because the contract that he's working on, he's got to finish the job before he can go back to Georgia. And so he's here for another month, so he's able to play. But he's a phenomenal bass player. He plays in numerous local bands in the Antelope Valley. Craig, who was on violin, he's like the concert master, the lead violin at the Palmdale Community Orchestra. He's also one of my bass players too. If Jonathan did have to go to Georgia today, he would have been playing bass and then playing violin once in a while, which is amazing because I don't know how he goes from the little fretboard to the big fretboard, but he's just unbelievable. But yeah, it's an example of, you know, excellence, just drawing out excellence, and you don't have to be an excellent player. I'm a hack. You know, I've been doing it a while, but I'm a hack. I enjoy it. I'm going to be playing guitar for God for the rest of my life, but you know, Matt is a great guitar player. He's a lot better than I am, but they see something in you, in your congregation, in the life of your church that makes them want to be a part of it. And as long as you just keep that going, you know, but it's not to say that, you know, I go to Jonathan's concerts, I talk with other musicians, and, you know, if it's like, hey, why don't you come over and check out the church? You know, I'm not against getting in secular musicians to play with us. I prefer that they do not lead, you know, because I think that's a big deal. You know, if I didn't know Sandra's heart and how much she loves the Lord, I would not have let her lead the song. But she's beyond anything that I can think of. So I have no problem letting her lead.
So does your praise band, they do all of the music? You don't have a person who plays, you have a person who plays the keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a piano and you do not have an organ?
Yo, we have a piano and an organ.
Well, who plays those?
Dathan.
In the traditional service?
Dathan plays the piano.
They play the piano and the organ in the traditional service?
Yes. We have a volunteer that plays the organ, though.
But in the contemporary service, you don't have the organ or
No.
the piano. It's just the praise.
Occasionally, I have no problems with the piano. I mean, in fact, our piano, it's an upright, but it's a beautiful sounding upright, and Dathan will play that once in a while because you can't match that with samples on a keyboard. And we have used the organ too. I mean, a lot of times he'll do organ sounds on the keyboard. I mean, he did that today for, I don't remember, one of the songs that he had kind of an organ sound because I love the Leslie B3 sound. Yeah, I'm not against, you know, and that was one of the reasons why I really wanted Craig to be able to play violin for us this morning, is that, you know, there are people in your congregation that may play some unusual instruments, something that you wouldn't necessarily associate with contemporary music, or the opposite. You know, I played guitar on hymns, you know, electric guitar on a hymn in a contemporary in a traditional sound, in a traditional setting, and make it work. Don't be limited by what you think is contemporary or what you think is traditional.
Another question.
Mm-hmm.
In our church, we do have a praise band. It's usually the young people,
Mm-hmm.
high school kids and some of the college kids. And we usually have a blended service.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have praise band starts first, and they'll do the opening song and all that, and
Right.
gets people kind of riled up. But we are finding that the congregation doesn't know that music,
Mm-hmm.
and they just kind of sit there. So they're not really a part of it.
Right.
So, and then our choir director, he will have them sing all kind of new songs. And so, but I read this article that says if you have a praise band, that you should have them to sing usually 10 songs and you sing those over and over again. Is that true or not? Or shall you just keep putting it up there and hope that they get it? Because our people don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they enjoy it, but they don't really sing along.
Right. It has a lot to do with
How do you get them involved?
with your with the culture. I mean, when we first started out, when Pastor Jim first asked me if I wanted to do that, we didn't start off right away with a contemporary service. We did the anthem for a couple of weeks, and then after, I don't know, a while, then maybe we did one other song, and then it got to a point where we were doing a couple, and then we heard from the congregation that there was some type of an interest. Then we started another service. We did have a blended service, but that was much later. What we tried to do is we were doing 3 services on a Sunday morning. We were doing an 8 o'clock, which was our blended service, a 9:30, and 11.
Define again what you mean by
Blended
blended.
was back then, because I don't think I was picking the music at the time. I would have the band would come in and warm up before the traditional service started, just to get there and warm up and do whatever. And then when we decided that we were going to try and do a blended service, the band was still showing up before that service started, and instead of just warming up and then going home, we had them warm up, play the first few songs in the service, and then we would do hymns for the rest of the service. So we do contemporary in the beginning, message, and then hymns at the end. And so that's what we called it, blended. Basically, it's just because we wanted to use the band because they were already there at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then they would go home or have breakfast and then come back for the 11 o'clock service. But yeah, to just do and the only purpose for the blended service was we wanted to maybe have something for our Sunday school teachers, the people that were working during worship, to have a time of worship, and then they would go off and do their Sunday school classes and whatever. And it worked for a little while, but we found that we only had, I think, 30 to 45 people, which, I know some people were saying, man, that's a lot of people. But for our church, we average about 145 for our traditional service and 120 for our contemporary. So 45 to put in all that work for one service, it was a little disheartening. And so we just kind of stopped and we just did the 2 services. But to have just one service that's blended, if the old saying, if you try and please everybody, you please nobody.
Yeah, I think that's what they'll sing if we're doing Shine, Jesus Shine.
Right.
They like that.
Okay.
They'll get involved.
Right.
But like the one you were doing today, the covenant song.
Yeah.
They would just stand there. And
Wow.
they'll let the choir sing.
Yeah.
But they won't, because they don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we go and sing the traditional, or 4,000 cups. Well, they'll sing that. 'Cause
Right.
They know that.
Right.
They know that, yeah. But if you put another contemporary up there, they don't really know. So I don't know how to get them to. They like it, but they don't know those songs.
Yeah. Well, when we introduce a new song, I'll do it like as the anthem,
Yeah, do you
and I'll do it a couple.
teach them?
You could teach them, do it a couple of weeks in a row, and then once they get used to it, then they may be more engaged. Another thing too is We warm up before the service starts. Kind of like what we're. I don't know if anybody was here, and we're playing the music that we're going to be playing during the service. And so if people are in the seats just kind of waiting for the service to start, and we're doing a new song, I may say, hey, this is the new song that we're going to be singing later on. This is how the chorus goes. And you could teach it to them. And I'm also not against doing that during service. Again, it's an intentional silence. There's nothing going on while I'm talking to the congregation, but I'm telling them, hey, we've got this new song that we're doing. It really works with the sermon, with the message. You may not have heard it before, but this is how the chorus goes. And we'll play through the chorus. It's like, okay, let's try that again. We'll play through the chorus again. One more time, play through the chorus. It's like, okay, guys, I think you got it now. Kick off the song and then start singing it. And then they may not know the verses, but when they get to the chorus, voices are raised. Mm-hmm.
Now, we do something similar at our church. Whenever we introduce new music, it's either the gathering, which is at the very beginning, or it's during the offertory.
Right. Yeah, the anthem, yeah.
And then there are two places during the service where we ask the congregation to rise. And they know that's when they're supposed to sing.
Mm.
So after having played those new songs a couple of times, we're gathering or offertory, we feel they know it, and then we'll slide it through one of those points where we ask the congregation to join in. And we always project the words
Right.
Yes.
to help people learn the lyrics. And after a while, they get to know it.
Yeah, and our congregation knows too that even with the choir, if I've got my back to the congregation directing the choir for like the call to prayer or something that's like that, the congregation knows. And another thing too is in worship, I want to try and eliminate as many awkward moments as possible. So if I've got my back to the choir, and I'll let the congregation know that anytime if you see words displayed up on the screen and you know the song, sing on out. I don't care if nobody else is singing. If you know it, go for it. That's kind of their cue is I can sing. Now if it's a big choral piece and we've got weird changes and big endings and things like that, even though it's a hymn that they know, if I don't have the words up on the screen, they may be singing along, but they're singing along silently. But that's kind of my cue for the congregation to know that if we kind of want you to sing, because for me it's not a show. I hate that. I hate the fact that people will sometimes call this the platform, or they'll call this the stage. It's not necessarily the altar. We just call it the platform. What I do is not for the benefit of the people that are in the seats. I'm singing to God, and if you guys happen to come along with me, great.
Yes, we don't have a praise band in our church,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't do praise music. And so when I visit a church that does have it, and this morning was an example, they show that the words are shown on the screen, but the punctuation,
Mm-hmm.
there's no punctuation. So where you were singing along and you pause, well, the words keep going and there's no comma there.
Right.
Or at the same time, there may be a comma there, but there's a pause and you sing through it.
Right.
Well, I find that distracting, and I lose the thought of what's being presented to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying, well, why are they doing that? And they're trying, well, when did he pause there the last time? And so I'm trying to think about that rather than what you have presented. Where it's very easy to put the pauses in the music.
Mm-hmm.
I have done that myself when
Right.
we did some praise music years ago. And it makes it a lot easier for the people that are new, make them comfortable in trying to sing the song.
Mm-hmm.
If it's their first time, they're just going to stand there and watch.
Right.
And it's going to be, they're going to have to do it numerous times before they actually feel comfortable even attempting the song.
Right.
Where if they see where you're going to pause, they know something's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it a lot easier for those who are new, looking at the new music.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do that where I'll have the word, and if there's a pause, I'll just do like a lot of dots before the next word, and that's why, like I said, I kind of like to have control of how the words are input. Usually the phrase, I'll try and get a phrase on one line so that that's kind of a pause happens or the thought changes, something happens. A lot of times, though, it's difficult because you want to try and get the words big enough so that people can read it, but still allow for the formatting so that you can know where the pauses and changes are. A lot of that, the planning for this worship service was a little bit different than my normal thing. I know a lot of the contemporary songs, even the covenant song, although I guess you kind of consider that contemporary, although it's an ancient, not an ancient prayer, but it's an old prayer from Wesley. Like I said, I would have like taught you guys how to sing some of these songs, but in the interest of time, I was kind of tasked with fitting a lot in a small amount of time that I didn't have that opportunity to teach you guys how to sing some of these songs. But yeah, with these songs, I would hopefully have already people would be know how the song goes, so they would kind of know where the pauses go, just from either me teaching them, from them hearing it, or hopefully the people around them know it and they can kind of listen and get off of that. But yeah, that is one of the things that I try and minimize, but it's difficult to do it completely.
Yeah, sometimes you have to put punctuation in.
Right.
It's really the wrong place.
Right.
In the sentence, whatever. But you need to show where the pauses, where the breaks are going to be, so they can think something's going to happen there, rather than unless they're singing through. No, nobody else is singing.
And with hymns, I pretty much try and do the punctuation exactly how it is in the hymnal. Another thing is, kind of irks me, but in the hymnal, like the these and the thous or whatever that are related to God, they're not capitalized. It's just lowercase. In contemporary worship, anytime you're talking about God or Jesus, whatever, it's a capital for the name of God, but it's not in the hymnal. So when I'm typing the words in the hymnal, it's like, I'm not going to do it. I just do it exactly the way it's in there, including the punctuation, because I know it's really important in that. In contemporary music, I'm not as much of a stickler for punctuation and capitalization, but yeah, it's a good idea. Especially to help people feel more comfortable with it.
And it's even very important when you're doing a traditional song in a contemporary style, where you're putting the pauses in different places,
Right.
than what's normally in the hymn.
Right. Yeah. A lot of that is, I would have chosen a lot. I would have known what you guys know and what you didn't know in my church, and I would have picked the songs according to that. Because I just basically assumed that you guys wouldn't know anything except the hymns, and I probably wasn't too far off from that. Although the songs that we did, Let It Rise, that's an old song. It's an old song. It's a little different than what the original arrangement is. The music director before me had this arrangement, and it was all right. But the little guitar part that I did, I had to write a guitar part that I can play and sing over the top of, and so that I came up with that little riff so that I could play and sing. It was just out of necessity. So that's kind of our arrangement. The band knows that if we're doing that song and they haven't played it before or they haven't heard it before, they're not going to hear it on the internet because it's my own arrangement. But I wouldn't have chosen as many new songs for you guys if this was my congregation. I just would have known, you don't know that song, you don't know that song, so I'm not going to choose that. But because I just figured you guys weren't going to know anything except the hymns, I'm just going to put what I wanted to go in there. What fit what Pastor Jim was saying and what fit the key, so we had the transitions. Because one of the things that Pastor Jim had told me when he wanted me to plan this was he really wanted the transitions to be tight. Because that's kind of what he's been seeing at some of the churches that he goes to, is that the transitions aren't tight and it's losing people. And so he's like, I want the transitions to be tight. It's like, okay, I'll do that. And so a couple of songs I wouldn't have chosen to be back to back like that, but because they're all in the same key, or we can work it kind of to be in the same key, like How Great Thou Art was in the key of A, and we had a D pad going underneath, which is all right, but it's a fifth of D, so it kind of works.
How do you plan a contemporary service for Ash Wednesday and Good Friday?
Ash Wednesday and Good Friday are pretty much kind of a blended service. Yeah, we do some one of the things at our church too is we have Wednesday night what we call food for thought, where we meet about 5. There's an icebreaker game, some type of activity. About 5:20, I'll do a couple of worship songs. I try and do one hymn and one contemporary. 5:30 starts the meal. About 5:40, the pastor just delivers a short message, and we're done by 6. That's on Wednesday nights. Ash Wednesday falls on Wednesday night. So in the past, we've done just kind of a food for thought type of a feel, but with an Ash Wednesday theme. So I would only be doing 2 songs, and I'd do something, a hymn and a contemporary song. This year, it's Pastor Jim White's first year. He wants to do like a full-on out traditional Ash Wednesday type service. So I have no idea what it's going to look like yet. That's February 10th. That's like, he has given me the scripture. Yeah, he has given me the scripture. He's given me a warning. Now the thing, Wednesday nights is my choir rehearsal night too. So if he's doing if he's doing service from 7 to 8, my choir rehearsal is usually 6:30 to 8. So that's going to cut drastically into my rehearsal. So I'm going to try to get the choir there at 6, do a real quick rehearsal, just exactly what we're having to do for Sunday, and then be done with it. But that's going to be an ugly day. Yeah?
We have a few people at our church who do music
Mm-hmm.
in the choir, but most people don't. So they learn this the way I know I learned in church, was to listen and
Mm-hmm.
repeat a million times, and then eventually you learn melody or whatever. So it's not as troubling when things aren't exactly the way they're supposed to be, because
Right.
you don't know anyway. So my question is, with the licensing agreement, are you allowed to print the music so that the people who absolutely say they have to have music can read it?
If it's a CCLI song,
Yes.
and you can tell because they have a CCLI number at the bottom.
Okay.
I've got Healing Grace. That's another Rick Munchow song. But yeah, there's a CCLI license number 1342572. If it has that, and like I said, song select. If it has the lead sheet there, yeah, you can print it out. You can make as many copies. Now you have to report it. There is a reporting period every year that you have to say, how many copies of this did you do? Did you project the lyrics up on the screen? You do have to report it. But yeah, you can make copies and hand it out.
Is the hymnal included in that?
No. But the way I do it is, a lot of times hymns they're in CCLI. So if it's not in CCLI, I won't do it well, no. If it's not in CCLI, then you can. I don't know if I come across a hymn that's not in CCLI. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you don't see CCLI numbers in the hymnal. But if I go on to their website, I pull up "How Great Thou Art." There's the CCLI, or if it's public domain, like what was one of the hymns that I was looking at? It said public domain. If it's public domain, you've got no problems with putting the words up on there. And yeah, there's no issues with that. But I suggest, CCLI for music, CVLI for videos. If you're going to show videos in your worship service, you should have a CVLI license. It's church video license. And another thing with CCLI is they've got other types of licensing within that for rehearsals and things like that. I don't do it. I do know of people that have done it. Like if you're learning a new song in band, and you bought the CD, and you make an MP3 and you give it out to everybody in the band. You can't copy music like that. You can't audio music. But CCLI does have a rehearsal license where it will allow you to make audio recording copies and to be distributed for rehearsal purposes. I don't do it because what I do is I point the link to YouTube and let them worry with the, they're probably not under copyright compliance with their videos. Most people aren't, but it's not my fault, it's theirs. Yeah.
Do you start off each of your services
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to some other churches that are contemporary
Mm-hmm.
where they show, like, as people are coming in, a video with some music that people are supposed to come in and get sent. Is there a difference
Right.
in that? And do you use both, or just
It depends. I mean, I've had times where like one of the songs that we were doing, "Awesome is the Lord Most High." The chorus is, "Raise your hands, all you nations, shout to God, all creations, how awesome is the Lord Most High." I don't know about your church. Our church, especially when we first started off, was not a hand-raising church. You know, the most you can get is like. Good thing. What I did is Tim Hawkins, funny Christian comedian. He has a routine that I saw on YouTube about hand raising. You know, and he calls that carrying the TV. And then fish, you know, really big, heartburn, village people, touchdown, you know, all these different, he's got names for all these things, but it was ways, you know, to kind of, in a lighthearted way, introduce hand raising in church. Now, they didn't raise their hands after I, you know, a few people did raise their hands after I showed the video, but, you know, there's ways to, you know, if you've got something different that you want to do in your church, don't be afraid to introduce it, and don't be afraid if it fails. You know, just treat it as a learning thing. But, you know, don't be afraid to try it again, too. But just try and find ways to, like I said, anything to make people feel comfortable in worship. That's my job. My job is to create that atmosphere of worship where people can come and meet God. One of the things when I first started, you know, this is kind of what I would like to wear, but when I'm doing the traditional worship service, it's not what I wear. I wear a tie, you know, a dress shirt, slacks, you know. For Christmas, I have my, from being the classical guitar ensemble, or classical guitar quartet, I have my tux shirt with my bow tie, and I've got a black suit that makes it look like a tux. But the music director before me had a problem wearing a tie in the traditional service because he's a contemporary guy. And Pastor Jim, when he asked me if I would mind wearing a tie when I led the traditional service, it's like, no, I have no problems with it. My job is to make the congregants feel comfortable in worship. And if me wearing a tie makes them feel comfortable in worship, fine, I don't care. You know, it's not what I'm going to want to do. I take my tie off before the next service, but I have no problems doing whatever it takes, within reason, to make people feel comfortable in worship. That's my job. And if it means wearing a tie, I'll wear a tie. Any other questions? I do have some handouts, a lot of stuff that I didn't talk about. But some of the resources that I talked about are on here, especially the hymns. There's resources in the back, and it does contemporary stuff too. igracemusic.com. Their motto is, "Our hope is to help the church recover the tradition of putting old hymns to new music for each generation and to enrich our worship with a huge view of God and His indelible grace." And they have hymns. They're just contemporary arrangements of hymns. I haven't used a lot of them, but I know it's there if I need to go to it. But we've got things like that. Yeah.
So, by the way, the United Methodist hymnal and faith music is available as a CD.
Oh, okay.
The program you can get, and it's really nice when you have to get those lyrics from the screen.
Yeah.
You want them to set their format.
Okay.
Beg your pardon? Oaks Parade?
Yeah.
Yes.
And some of the other worship things, you know, I try and do as free as much as I can, because I'm already making the church spend enough money on Planning Center and CCLI and everything like that. So, like I said, worshiptogether.com has free stuff that you can do. Leadworship.com is Paul Balash's website. He's the guy that does Open the Eyes of My Heart, Above All, things like that. His website is really cool because he's all about training and leading and teaching people how to do things. So most of his songs, in one form or another, are available free on his website. Leadworship.com. It's in the last page. Yeah, I've been to a few seminars with him at it. If I can say an idol, somebody that I want to be like when I grow up, although I'm pretty much grown up, but I bought a Ben Gowell is his electric guitar player in the band, and I bought an instructional DVD of his, and him and Paul Balash, and they have no problems. Like, you got another guitar player in your band? Make a copy of the DVD and give it to him. You got to make a copy and give it to him. He doesn't care if you make copies of his stuff and give it out, because his whole thing is to train up new musicians and bring people in. And granted, he gets his songs played in the church, but above all, and open the eyes of my heart, it's being played enough times in church. He doesn't need to promote himself. He's well beyond that. It's just he wants to give. He wants to be a giver, and he's just a phenomenal guy. Leadworship.com, worship tutorials. That's where I got the pad that you heard. I've got the pad in all 12 keys. And so Dathan was changing the pad during a couple of songs, just so that we always had something going on underneath. They're not expensive. It's like $10 for all 12 keys. Each pad is like 20 minutes long, so you're not going to run out of time. Worship tutorials. Yeah, the last one. He also has other things on there too. When you talk about how do you get contemporary songs, he does a lot of singer-songwriter type setups where it's just him and his acoustic guitar singing and playing some of these contemporary worship songs. So if you don't have a large group in your church, if it's just because like for Food for Thought, it's just me and my guitar. When I go up to San Luis Obispo in February with Pastor Jim Powell, it's probably just going to be me and my guitar. I'm not going to be able to get my band to come up there with me. But he has great arrangements. It's just him and his guitar, and it's all the hottest, latest, whatever contemporary songs. And he used to provide the chord charts for it, but CCLI kind of said that's a no-no, because not so much because of the chord charts, because that's not copyrighted, but the lyrics. He had the lyrics with the chords, and so that was a problem. So what he does is he makes a video of him playing the song and puts the chords up on the corner of the video, and you can look up the lyrics online. You can get the lyrics wherever you want and just kind of write it down on top of it. Or if you have Song Select, it's probably already on Song Select with the chords, but he'll just show you how to play it and sing it. But it's a great resource, especially if you've got a small group where it's just a guitar player and a singer, or guitar player and drums or bass or something like that. He has it just written just for a small group. And he also has the pads on there. And now those are in major key, although you can't really tell the difference between major and minor with a pad. It just kind of sounds with other notes kind of floating in and out. But he also has it now for all 12 minor keys. But I just got it because it's just cheap and it works great.
What would you think of starting a praise band with an organ?
I have no...
We have a digital organ that can play all those instruments up there.
Mm-hmm.
It's recorded notes instead of the generated notes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can play every one of them. Could that be something where you start as a band or a praise band of it?
Yeah, I mean,
Just keep filling in where the musicians you're missing.
yeah. I would see, the people that are coming expecting a contemporary service might go, an organ? What is that? Where he was playing the organ on a keyboard. Yeah, and it's sometimes it's the look. Like I said, I personally have no problem with it. For us, it's more of logistics. Our organ is off to the side, and the band is up on the platform in the middle. And so to have an organ player playing with us, it's almost attached. It's kind of like this setup. The organ would be over there, and the band is over here. It's just it wouldn't work because all of our mic inputs and everything is yeah. But yeah, I have no problems playing. I might be different in that aspect, but we're all unique in that aspect because we're coming from a Methodist tradition, so you do have to kind of say, you're not going to be able to do a real, I shouldn't say real, that's the wrong word. You're not going to be able to do maybe what's expected as a contemporary, just a pure contemporary worship service. You're not going to come to our church and expect the vineyard. You're not going to come to our church and expect Saddleback. Well, you could expect it. You're not going to get it. Because we're a Methodist church. We have liturgy, which, and another thing too is we have done some responsive readings in our contemporary service. I'm not against that. We've done some, what do they call it, where you sing the thing, and maybe that is a responsive reading. Yeah, call and response, yeah. We've done that too. I'm not against that. And right out of the hymnal, the exact melody with Dathan on piano playing it. But that's when I do a lot of my talking too. I tell them, this is what we're doing. The words are going to be up there. We're going to sing I'll maybe have a different color in the background. We're all singing the background that's red. In the green part, that's me saying the words. Your part is in the blue background with the bold print. And so when that red part, and I go over the melody with them 4 or 5 times before we get into it. And once I feel that they've got a grasp of it, then we'll do it. One of the things that I did too was there's a kind of a contemporary song called Psalm 5. Give ear to my word, O Lord. It's a nice little contemporary song, but it's short. It's really short. It's basically a chorus. And so what I did was I did the rest of Psalm 5, but we did it as a responsive reading. We sang their chorus, then I put up my part, where I would read Psalm 5, then the congregation read the part in bold, then we sang, give ear to my word, O Lord. Then we did the whole Psalm 5. That's another thing too. I love the Psalms. One of the things that I did when coming on board was, that's how I get my day started at work. I read a Psalm. I heard from Paul Balash. It's one of the things that he said he kind of did. And so I'll read a Psalm, then I'll get to work. And so any opportunity that I can have of fitting a Psalm into the worship service, I'll go for it. How much time do we have? Are we done?
No.
No? Okay.
We're going to do communion in here at 2:30. So
Oh, 2:30? Okay.
you have as much time as you need. Up to 2:30.
Okay.
That's all the time we got. But
One of the other things, Pastor Jim White had gotten these for all of our staff. It's from Cokesbury. This one happens to be on worship, the gifts of God from the people of God. And the back of it says, the worship ministry of the local church is often the first, if not only, entry point for people seeking to establish a relationship with God in Christian community. The ways in which we worship, honor God, set a tone for the overall ministry of the church. This guideline helps implement and guide the work of the ministry area by focusing on such topics as basic responsibilities of worship, of the worship committee and worship planning team, keys to leading in vital worship, ways to promote spiritual life, yada yada. But it's a cool little book. It's pretty small. It's a quick read. It does give you some ideas. I think they have too much of a problem giving it out, but just in case. It's a list of websites and blogs and things like that. And this is definitely from the United Methodist perspective too. Like I said, we're in a unique position where we're trying to give people what they expect, when they expect to come to a Methodist church, even if they're coming to a contemporary service, they have to expect something different, and try and give that to them. Oh, yeah.
Put in a shameless plug.
Yes.